morning. Welcome to our program, Struggles of the Spirit. I'm your host, the Reverend Leland Udell, and we're glad you tuned into this program today. It's the first program of a new series that I'm doing on prayer. That may sound kind of pious and churchy, but I hope you don't find it that way. I'm attempting to talk about prayer in a broad way, where we're not just talking about Christian prayer, but we're talking about Buddhist prayer, and we're talking about people who wouldn't even say their activity is prayer. So I want to sort of challenge you, and hopefully you'll phone in. This is a phone-in show at 12:15. It's you're invited to phone in, and the phone number of the studio will be listed on the screen, and just phone us and we'll talk with you and share with you, and ask you to join our circle. Welcome. Our guest today is a longtime friend, Bill Cleary, of Burlington, I guess I should say. He started with his wife the Hopkins bookstore. It used to be on Church Street. I remember it well. New owner, new location. He is a musician, a composer of music, a poet, a writer. He also, at one time, was a Roman Catholic priest, very much involved in education. So I think you'll enjoy Bill, and he's going to talk about prayer. And our subject today is sort of, what is prayer? What isn't prayer? What are we trying to do when we pray? How do other people, different than ourselves, pray? And how we might think in more maybe productive ways about what prayer is. So, Bill, I invite you to jump in here.
Thanks for inviting me, Lee. I didn't realize it was going to be a whole series about prayer.
Oh yeah, this is just the first.
Well, you are apparently a person that cares a lot about prayer and thinks of prayer as a big topic. You know, to talk about prayer, it's important to make one big distinction at the beginning. Saying prayers, as everyone on earth does sometimes, and communion with God. In which you don't have to say anything, and it really is a lot different than saying things. What my writings have been about pretty much have been communion with God, or communication with the mystery. So that's the way I would distinguish that at the beginning, and I think for this whole series it's important to distinguish.
I think what is said here today, hopefully, for those of you who want to watch our series for the next month and maybe 2 months, it'll sort of set the stage for where we're going.
Okay. Well, we're also talking about something that's not easy. As we, at least in my spiritual journey has gone along, it becomes more and more difficult to say prayers. I can imagine all kinds of creatures saying prayers, as many of our viewers do. And you can even imagine an animal or a potato or a carrot saying a prayer, and that's one of the things I might start with. I wrote a little book about the garden and how the garden is full of creatures, and if these creatures had intelligence, this is the way they might pray. Now, this would give us just a little start.
As you think of them praying.
As I think of them praying, yeah.
Okay.
This is kohlrabi and jasmine and ivy. Now here's the prayer that the poison ivy might say. Under the title of the Prayer of the Poison Ivy Police, there's a little moral. Every creature on earth has its purpose, though we may never detect it. It's just a little piece of theology that everything has its name and its destiny, but we may not know its name and we may not know its destiny, and oftentimes we wonder, now what's the purpose of poison ivy? So,
Or mosquitoes.
our mosquitoes, we have a mosquito in here too. And the mosquito is, all the mosquitoes that, they don't bite you, they just put their little prong into you and take blood for their young ones. And it's all females that give us these mosquito bites. I didn't read this over before, but this is the prayer of the poison ivy police. And it presents also different concepts of God, like we know that God is not physical, therefore God could not be male, but often we call God Lord,
He,
Father. But the poison ivy police call God Goddess. You know, they think of God as female. Queen of all that lives, we are your police executives, called poison ivy, standing guard in field and woods and garden yard, wherever infant seedlings thrive, needing protection to survive. Oh yes, our cousins win esteem on ivy halls of academe, reaching the tops of churchly spires and towering homes of country spires. Squires, these are other kinds of ivy. Costuming all the noble scene with glistening coats of evergreen. But we're not fussy. Poor or rich, if you trespass, you get the itch. Though few invaders even know that first offenders are let go. Did you know that?
No.
The first time you touch poison ivy, it doesn't bother you. We only punish the poor dunce who touched our wet leaves more than once. Dear Queen, someday our hearts may climb toward heaven's pinnacle sublime, and learn to reach up high and soar where hearts sing praise at heaven's door. But while we're useful down below, we'll stay on guard through rain or snow. Beware, we will trespassers catch. Beware, unless you like the scratch. The prayer of a poison ivy.
Now they're standing guard for the goddess?
This particular ivy imagines God as female, but
No.
I talked to a...
Guard plants is what I'm asking.
Oh.
Their role is to be a guard?
Yeah, they're protecting, they think they're protecting other growing things around them. At least these poison ivies do.
Okay.
Some people imagine God as a great tree. Whatever we imagine God as, it's not correct. It's always a metaphor at some distance from God. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine God as a great tree, that can inspire you in some ways, but other people imagine God as a great ocean. Kind of for myself, I imagine God as the Spirit totally within and totally around us, who makes everything be.
In the Hebrew Scriptures, God is the rock of my salvation.
Yeah.
God is rock, or burning bush, or mountain, the holy mountain of Sinai. So
those are all wonderful metaphors.
they are.
And they give us at least a partial idea of God. Elizabeth Johnson says, she's the Roman Catholic nun who wrote a great book on theology called She Who Is. She says that we can only name toward God. So she invents this funny little set of words, name toward God. We can't name God like the Hebrew Scripture names God as Yahweh and as Elohim. Christian Scripture names God in many ways. But according to theologians, that's only a naming toward. We don't really know a name for God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
God is ultimately beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
Our labels.
So to talk about prayer, I really learned how to pray from my mother. You may have too. I remember falling asleep with my 3 brothers upstairs in an unheated room one night. I was about, I guess, 8 years old, and it was dark, and Mother was putting us all to bed and turned off the lights and said, "Say your prayers now." And I said, "I already did." And she came over to my bed and she whispered, "Say it as if you mean every word." I don't think I have ever learned a better rule about prayer, or that anyone else might follow to learn how to pray. If you say prayers like the Our Father, take it slow and pray it as if you mean every word. It's a lesson we can teach our children. And
maybe the term say prayers is not a good one. Maybe it's pray prayers.
well, that'd be better.
Yeah. But there was a cartoon in the New Yorker years ago of two clergy sitting there saying their evening prayers together, and outside through the picture window you could see the palm trees being bent almost double. And finally, as the cartoonist paints even more ferocious weather, one clergy person looks to the other anxiously and says, "Do you think we should pray?" And here they've been praying the whole time.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know, I really think, I have been thinking about prayer my whole life. Here I am, over 70 now, and thinking about it and writing about it. And I have kind of got to the place where silence is the heart of prayer. That is the real central heart of what we're up to in communing with God and being in touch with God eventually comes to a kind of silence, because it is so awfully mysterious. You know,
you want to say more about that silence? Because silence can be that of awe, it can be that of fright, it can be that of being tongue-tied, it can be many, many, many things. How are you thinking of silence?
Well, you know, we might take Job as an example. I love that story of Job. And when Job has all his troubles, and he has lost everything, and he's in a state of practically despair, and all his advisors are no help to him at all, he finally complains to God, and God says to him something like, wait, where were you when I built the foundations of the mountains? Where were you when I laid the sea where it is and separated the clouds from the earth? And Job finally covers his mouth with his hand. I am dust and ashes, he said. Now, to me, that's a great prayer. In fact, we can pray with our bodies, as you know, when you can't pray. Sometimes you can take your hand, just put your hand over your mouth like that, and in the presence of God, that's a colossally great prayer. That's communion. That's the kind of silence.
To cover your mouth?
You cover your mouth, or you could put one finger on your mouth. You don't need any words.
And how is that a prayer, as you see it, Bill?
That's a prayer because your heart and mind are in acceptance and harmony with what's happening, no matter how terrible it is. You've got a big crisis coming tomorrow in your life, Lee, you were telling me about.
Right.
There will be things you get to the stage where you cannot make sense of it all. It's beyond you. And how do you pray then? What words do you use? All you need is to cover your mouth like Job. Whatever is good. I accept it, even though it's not good in the sense that it feels good or it brings about good, but it's God's way. We can also, another wonderful prayer is to put your hand on your heart and have it mean gratitude. You can do that all during the day, no matter what you're doing. You're driving along and somebody misses you with their car. You just do this, you know, it keeps you in communion with God. I think that for my life, in dealing with whatever ups and downs there are, and there are a lot of downs and a lot of ups too, these physical actions mean a lot to me. You know, I often put my hand on my heart, or I put my finger on my mouth, or I do other things with my hands that mean before God something in particular, you know.
Well, for the Christian, they often will cross themselves and that can be a prayer.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
And like if you're scared out of your wits, you say, "Well, I'm in Christ, and so that's what I'm depending on."
Yeah.
That's who I'm depending on, but you need to do something. You just can't sit there. I remember my former bishop, my first bishop in New York City, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. He used to criticize people who just sat there like this, and he said that's the headache prayer or the Excedrin position. You need to do something usually.
I was watching a little child be fed not long ago, and his mother put a spoon in the cereal and put this spoon in his mouth, and he went num 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 num, and the mother was going num num too, num num.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of the name of God, Om, for some religions, and the practice of lots of spiritual people of saying, humming Om.
Now tell us about the Buddhist prayer there. That fits right in, obviously.
Yeah.
So tell our viewers about that.
Well,
this is your camera, and that's my camera. So if you want to look at the viewers directly, and then just look there.
Well, I don't know what else to say. I think.
Well, some people hear that and they think it's a lot of mumbo jumbo.
Well, you see, it starts out with faith in the existence of God.
Mm-hmm.
There is a great mystery around us, even here in the studio, but also keeping these marvelous machines going within us and around us, and the colossal creation that is happening. I read the other day that when you add up all the speeds that we are traveling as people on the top of the earth going around, and as members of the earth going around the sun, and as members of the sun going through the galaxy, and as the galaxy moves, we are all traveling at 900,000 miles an hour.
No wonder I get tired at the end of the day.
The marvels of the DNA that hangs together in our body. In other words, we're surrounded by God. And we're surrounded by mystery, this powerful mystery that fashioned us and follows us and cares about us and is so awfully hard to understand. So as long as this mystery is active and caring around us, how do we respond? Mm-hmm. Well, if you think of yourself as an infant before God, being nurtured and fed by the presence of God, and your whole future being put in front of you by God, you might just hum. I don't have any words. All I have is a contented kind of a acceptance in the form of Om. And well, psychologists tell us, of course, that induces a very healthful form of meditation and nurturing for our heart and our bodies, and so that's another good thing that I think prayerful people do.
This is prayer language that you're familiar with. That's that speaks to you, and I guess you're saying that our viewers can come up with their own prayer language.
Oh, sure. They might even be singing. I can imagine a person who knows a song. Might be "You Are My Sunshine." Mm-hmm. They might just sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." It's a prayer. Mm-hmm. I often whistle a prayer.
You make me happy when the skies are gray.
No, I whistle a Gregorian chant. Veni Creator Spiritus. It's a wonderful name for God, Creator, Spiritus, wind, air, inspires us. Mm-hmm. So you get depressed and you whistle a little bit. It tends to pick up your spirits, and you're also realizing that all is well, ultimately.
Well, as you know, the most popular, best-selling audio music tape in the world for a long time were these Spanish monks singing Gregorian chant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just in religious circles, it was across the board,
Yeah.
around the world.
Well, I think that they...
Why were they so attractive? Most people aren't interested in becoming monks or sisters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why did it become so important to people to buy that tape?
I think it's something like this, Lee. We live on the edge of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
The sacred is there, but it seems it's hard. You have to really think to realize how sacred this is. And those sounds are ritualized sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they give us a sense of mystery and the sacred. La 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 la. To me, that is much more than just music. That is like putting the world together around you.
Yeah.
So those monks were really going right to your soul with their sound, and even if you didn't understand the Latin, it still was fun to hear. And when you do understand the Latin, it is really wonderful music. Probably the greatest music ever written.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it goes off into multiple melody syllables.
Mm.
And they sing ha, it has a possibility of bringing your soul together in a really unique kind of a way.
It's healing.
Yeah. And it doesn't, that's just kind of the high church sound. I mean, the gospel music does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really pulls your soul together, and they don't care really what the words say so much as it's the sound.
Power of the music. Well,
it's beyond words. The sound is beyond words. The words don't begin to say what we feel until we can sing.
well,
or dance.
Yeah. Well, we live by our emotions, not by our heads, really, not by our brains.
Emotions has a kind of a negative implication, as if it's something we could control. But if we call it our heart,
mm-hmm.
or our whole feeling system, it has a knowledge all its own.
Mm-hmm. It
is a guide to the sacred, and it's a beautiful way to add to our prayer life.
You're familiar, of course, with the Russian Orthodox way of saying that we pray to God with our mind standing in our heart.
Yeah, yeah.
And you think of those organs. They're not just symbolic. Somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to comment about that? I'm just thinking about that it somehow
I don't know,
integrates.
You know, it's amazing how words sometimes, even a few words said properly, suddenly make sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
Now that set of words, the first time I heard it, made sense to me. We pray with our mind in our heart. So it's intelligent. We're not being wacky. We're saying something such as, I was going to use the Latin word auspice, which is what a mantra that I use, but you could say, look at me, look. When a person who wants to pray might feel the presence of God and want to comfort themselves with that, they might say the word look. Mm-hmm. Look, look.
Mm-hmm.
God certainly is looking in some way at us. And that intelligent thought is in our heart because we feel it too. So we've got our mind in our heart. And those monks, they often pray words like the Psalms, the gorgeous Psalms, often start with words like, look at me, Lord, look at me, a Holy One, and look at me with pity, I'm in terrible pain, I'm lost, I don't know what to make of all this. Those are very, very helpful. I love the Psalms.
I'm asking you a loaded question. I think I know how you'll answer it. But,
okay.
But can you be a spiritual person and not belong to a religious institution?
Oh, sure. It's more fun when you belong to a religious institution. It's more fun. You know, I think going to church essentially is a deep, fun experience.
Well, tell us about that.
It's not fun like going down mountain on a sled. You know, it's not that kind of
Alpine
fun.
slides and stuff.
But it is, for me and for a lot of people, it is the experience of widening your life, which calms your soul, and you bring in all the feelings of the other people around you and sing together. You agree together that at least we know there's a mystery around here.
There's a commonality here, a shared
Yeah, and it has a beginning,
perspective.
it has a middle, and it's not too long, it ends. And essentially you had a fun experience, and a lot of people wouldn't miss it. You know, it's just, so that's the advantage of a religion, but a lot of people don't have access to a good religion. I think they might find that their religion is sexist and it makes males dominate, or it's hatred of another group, or it tells you that you're better than other people, and your role in life is to go around teaching others, which is a form of arrogance. If that's your religion, you're better off not attending.
Yeah, everyone else is going to hell but me.
Yeah. No, I think you can always bring in some people and light a candle and read and pray together. That's what the early Christians did in imitation of their Jewish ancestors. And
why don't you tell people a little bit about lighting candles? That's a form of prayer.
yes.
Again, like some Protestant groups may not understand that. I think
Yes.
I think Buddhists do.
Yeah.
I don't know about would Jews or Muslims understand?
Oh yeah, Jews light candles and Muslims light candles. I think people are worried. The wise people of the tribes have always been worried about superstition. So they're wary of things like light the candle and something wonderful is going to happen. That is a form of ignorance and illusion. Lighting the candle is not going to... People often light a candle during a storm. You know, there's a terrible rainstorm or snowstorm outside, they'll light a candle. It doesn't stop the storm.
But it helps if the power goes off.
You know, one of the keys for me, Lee, to your genuinity or your genuineness of your spirituality is your light heart.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think the Muslims, when they die, say that your heart is weighed against a feather, and if your heart is too heavy, you can't get into heaven until you lighten it up some way.
The Muslims say that.
Well, I think it is. It's the Muslims, or maybe it's the Muslim, maybe the Sikhs or the
Sunnis?
The Sunnis, possibly. So what was I going to answer about? Oh, a candle.
Candles, yeah. A lot of people use them for romance or for making sweet-smelling candles to make a nice smell in the room.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in our culture don't think of it as having a prayer usage.
Okay. Well,
Vigil lights are out in the Roman Catholic Church. You know that.
well, they are in church, but I think in homes people still light candles in front of icons, and it kind of looks like someone praying. In fact, when you see somebody at prayer, they look like a candle burning. You know, they're an ordinary candle, but when their heart warms up to the presence of God, they kind of illuminate. Now, what a candle does is it drops out a lot of details of your face and the room, and it creates a circle. And I think our sense of the world is this is more true than what we see with all the lights on. If we turn off the lights and light one candle, we get an idea that everything is united. It's all illuminated and it comes together, and that is true, and that's a part of the vision of being a religious or a spiritual person. You drop out some of the details. For instance, a book like this might have a red edge along the cover, you know. It creates an image that these are all one thing, and that gives you the idea that the Bible, or whatever it is you have, the Koran, is a united and single message or word. So it elevates The candle, I would say, elevates what you're doing into a ritual space, and it's more true there than the other space full of light. Now, if you think lighting a candle, see, what really speaks to God, if you ask me, is a person carrying a heavy burden courageously.
Okay.
So those people who have heavy burdens to carry and who carry them without despair are the walking prayers on earth, as far as I'm concerned. They really are holy people and don't know it, and the fact that they don't know it makes them even holier. But that's where real prayer happens. But we have to find, ordinary folks like ourselves have to find ways to pray and to call attention to the fact that this moment is sacred. Now, Roddy and I, in the morning, light a candle before breakfast. You know?
You do?
Yeah. I don't know why that is, but in lighting the candle, and we often sing a little song about "Come, Holy Spirit," and enlighten our hearts. Is usually so we sing it in Latin, which also is another elevation of language into a sacred sphere. As long as we don't understand that it's superstitiously that it's more powerful in Latin,
Sure, yeah.
because it's Jesus spoke Latin, of course. That's why we speak in Latin. just joking. So I don't know whether I've answered that question about the candle, but
Somewhat, yeah.
candles are really great to light, and they create a ritual atmosphere which gives us a instinct of the truth around us that ordinary lights don't give us.
I've had a friend who was really quite oppressed by a sense of evil and despair and hopelessness, and I suggested that he have a candle burning all the time.
Oh.
And that when he lit it, he should ask God, may this light be the light of Christ. May it protect me from my fears and my sense of collapse within myself.
Oh.
And he said he found it very important. It really had a real powerful reassurance to him.
We can't see what's around us. So many things are invisible. God especially.
Sure.
So lighting that candle for him might have just reminded him constantly, there is somebody else here. There is another heart, there is another mind, there is another plan, there is another force larger than myself, and I can do things with the help of that force that I can't do by myself. There's other spirits around us too. I'm a believer in spirits.
Sure.
And the spirits of our ancestors and other people's ancestors and the saints and whatever else God may have created around us in terms of people or personalities we call angels. And I think those are demanded by the kind of mysteries we have around us.
And some of this is my opinion. You may not agree, but that I think some of the New Age type of religion has arisen because at least the Christian church has dumped a lot of its historic approach about angels and about other creatures who prayed for us.
Well, it's hard to keep these concepts in line. It is true that I think that there are spirits around and angels around, but it's important to remember the presence of God in especially the poor and people carrying heavy burdens and the marginalized and the oppressed.
Oh, sure.
There is a sacredness, and the God of the Bible, if you remember the first time God speaks in the Bible, it's because he was terribly worried about the slaves in Egypt. The first words from God, we're saying his and so on, but God is not any sex, but all sexes.
You mean God doesn't shave every day?
If he did, he wouldn't have that beard. So that God is believable to me, because if we all believed in it, we would pay attention to the single moms and the people out of work and those who have special burdens. We would honor. We know that's where spirituality and religion really start. Honoring those sacred beings, those sacred events.
And if we don't honor them, then our religion is
vain. In fact, we can say 1,000,000 prayers, but if we don't share what we have, it's useless.
Yeah, the prophets in the Hebrew Scriptures say that very loudly.
Yeah,
very
that's
strong.
right, they do. And they got stomped on and crushed.
No, they sure did.
Yeah.
On a different note, if I can switch, I apologize, I can't remember his last name, but there's a Jesuit writer and from, I think, Weston School of Theology, who his first name is Bill. You may have heard that name before, but his last name slips me. But anyway, he writes a lot about prayer and spiritual direction, and he says that you can have a sense as to whether God is hearing your prayers or not, or and that there's like a sixth sense. I mean, in other words, when you pray, is it like your prayer is not being received or not? Now, he's not saying that God is refusing to hear your prayer. He's refusing to be in relationship with you. He's not saying that, but he's saying that something's getting in the way of your relationship with God. If you pray to God and the prayer seems to sort of go out the window and just doesn't get anywhere, it doesn't create a space, a closeness between you and God. And you can sense this, he said.
He's a Jesuit, and maybe it's Johnson. Is it Bill Johnson?
No.
Anyway,
it's an Irish name. You may have heard.
This concept originated in the 16th century, before there was any knowledge of psychology, psychiatry, and those kinds of things. And they had the idea that you could tell if you were on the right track by the feelings that you had.
Yeah.
Now, there's some truth in that even today, but spiritual directors in those days used to make a great deal of how you felt. Well, we've learned that there are some people that feel awful all the time.
That's true.
Are they never able to say any prayers? No. They have a compulsive depression, or there's a lot in spiritual direction that needs to take advantage of modern psychology.
You have to be very careful what you say.
And also, you're imagining God as being kind of a listener or a great king who's separated from you, whereas the God of modern theology is much more mysterious than that, and cannot be identified, cannot be named, cannot be figured out, cannot be predicted what will happen. And one very important thing, we had some friends who arrived in the United States from Africa, and we took them in and we helped them very much. They were in a lot of trouble and a lot of, they had a lot of debts, and they were trying to get themselves established, and they were taken over by a religious group here in Burlington, and they began to pray from morning to night. And I suddenly realized they were trying to pinch God. You know, God is so much more compassionate than we are.
Oh, sure.
That, if we say to God, why don't you have a little pity? That's ridiculous, because God is pity cubed, compassion. So there's no need to multiply prayers. Even Jesus said that that's a perfectly good instinct, but it's essentially misguided, because the God we are trying to influence is already so maternal and caring about the person that nothing we could say would make God more merciful. God is infinitely merciful. But our prayer can be, any human utterance that we choose in front of our parent, our mother, our Great Spirit. We can say anything, it's forgiven if it happens to be the wrong words, but we are not going to change God's mind in some way by saying the right kind of prayers or saying the right number of prayers or praying all day. Those people needed to look at the newspaper and find a job and take care of themselves physically and get to the hospital and learn the language and instead of praying all day.
Right, right.
So anyway, it's not that hard to pray well, I believe. Well, but it isn't easy either. Go ahead.
They were sort of looking for Aladdin's lamp they could rub, and and they wanted magic, which there isn't any such magic.
Well, you know, we don't really know what there isn't. You know,
well, God does surprise us. That's for sure. Well, like for example, you know, who would ever have dreamt that the wall that Russia had erected, the Berlin Wall, would be taken down by the Russians? I mean, that was the last thing, you know, we probably thought. Maybe 100 years from now, but not now. I mean, and it did. And the same thing with and the Union of South Africa. We were positive there was going to be a terrible bloodbath, and Mandela would never be given a position of power. He'd been in prison for like 20-odd years. And you know, he would have polarized things, and it would have been. And look, so. There are things happen that we just have no way of understanding how they came to be.
Well, it is important that we desire good things, and prayers make us desire and organize our desires and to pray for things that we hope for and all that. But we have to know at the same time that we're not sure what we're doing. We're mostly trying to harmonize with the world around us and be a part of it, and in order for there to be harmony, there has to be diversity, and the different notes create this vast and mysterious symphony that's around us, and it's full of crazy sounds too. And where do those come from? That's where we put our finger on our mouth, and like Job, we admit we are unable to figure it out.
I guess I want to ask you for your help here, because I think this is an issue that we need to touch on before we open our phone for phone in, which will be momentarily, and that is a lot of people think of prayer as gimme this God, give me that God, like money if you're poor. Or give me whatever I want, and they think of God as an indulgent parent, and that God just has to have his chain pulled, and then there are others on the other side who say, well, there's no point to pray at all because God knows what you need, God knows how you feel, God knows where your heart is, so there's no reason to pray. So those are two attitudes about prayer. One, you don't need to pray because God knows it all anyway. And the other is, gimme God, gimme. Any thoughts about that?
Well, keep the distinction between saying prayers and communion with God. We all need communion with God. It's a luxury, it's a pleasure, it's a great joy to know there is a God and we're in communion with God.
That's the word, communion.
Now over here, as far as asking for things, we don't really know enough about God to know what works and what doesn't work. To me, it feels inappropriate for me to make a list of my needs because God has a list of my needs, loves me more than I love myself, and I don't get much out of that. But I don't blame any other people for doing that. They may not have a sophisticated concept, and what they really mean is, God, you are great. You are the source of life. There isn't anything you haven't taken care of. All they're saying that they need money and they need health and they need, their children to behave.
They need a second car. And need money for a college education.
I think we shouldn't stop people from doing that, but it's just that's a very different thing. And C.S. Lewis, your confrere in Anglicanism, wrote the key book on prayer anyway, Letters to Malcolm. Was a wonderful book, and he discusses that at great length. And even Jesus, ask for things.
Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find.
And you will find. And Paul and Elijah. And
so we shouldn't be too sophisticated.
Well, I don't think we can make any rules for anybody else. We learn a style of spirituality that fits us and then practice it.
Thank you, Bill. That's a good way to look at those issues. So I do want to ask you people, to our viewers, to phone in now. We're eager to hear your thoughts, your comments, your wisdom, your questions, whatever you'd like to share with us. It makes it a lot more fun for us to have feedback, and we have 15 minutes or less to hear your words. So please, this is a subject of prayer, and we have a guest, Bill Cleary, is an expert on the subject, and I'm your host, the Reverend Lee Udell. So please phone us. We're awaiting your call.
Now, in the meantime, should I read another little prayer that a potato might say, or
if it's something that you think would illuminate everything that's gone before? Well, sometimes prayers do, or poetry does. You have some other books, or any of the other books, or something that just speaks to our subject today in a special way? Oh, well, we have a question, or a call anyway. One of our viewers, please, Karen, turn on the system. Welcome. Okay. Hello, welcome.
Do you hear me now?
I can't hear your voice. Okay.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Loud and clear.
Well, hello to both of you. This is Jean Turin.
Oh, Jean, hi. Welcome.
My aged mind sometimes devises thoughts that I believe might not be valid. So I need help from wiser people like you two.
I would doubt that some of your thoughts are not valid. I don't like that word. Tell us, Jean, what's on your mind?
Well, I was brought up in a home with no religious practices whatsoever.
No formal practices?
No. When son Peter was about 6 years old, every child in the community went to Sunday school. So we had to seek out a place for him, and we found the Washington Ethical Culture Society.
Sure.
Jack and I became members, but when we moved to Vermont, there is no ethical society in the whole state of Vermont.
True.
So we found the Unitarian Universalist Church. Prayer was not part of either the ethical or the Unitarian services, so prayer has never been a part of my life. I have been a pianist from early childhood, so I wonder, if playing music gives you the same sustaining benefits as prayer?
Oh, yes.
It is physical, intellectual, emotional, can I say spiritual?
Yes, you
What
can.
do you think?
I would say yes, you can, of course. Now, Jean, every time you sang in church, you said a prayer. So there are prayers part of the Unitarian service. But when you play music, it certainly is a prayer, because it's as if expressing beauty in the architecture of sound, which otherwise would not be there. It's a way of saying the world is beautiful, more beautiful than we ordinarily hear. It creates a sacred atmosphere. So it does everything I would imagine meditation or prayer would do.
Comes from your soul, Jean. Comes from
Especially when you create it yourself, Jean, or when you play it under duress or difficulty, as you yourself sometimes do.
I know a lot of people who, if they feel mixed up and confused and they don't know where they're at, they will go to the piano and play the piano because it'll integrate them.
Thanks
Jean?
for the call, Jean.
Anything more? Okay. Well, we appreciate Jean. You're phoning in.
Jean is kind of a miracle. As you know, she plays with one hand.
Yes.
Wonderful music. all with one hand.
Yeah.
It's great. She also got off the remark that there isn't any ethical society in Berlin, but the Episcopal Church is pretty ethical. I mean, maybe there's another call. I don't want to interfere.
Well, we're waiting. Yes, there is. What do you know? Okay. Welcome to Struggles of the Spirit.
Thank you. I really have loved this today. I've been laughing and laughing. And in reference to Jean's question, I wondered if what St. Augustine said would be so true in her regard, that whoever sings prays twice.
I like that. Yes.
But I also want to tell Mr. Cleary that his lavalier microphone is kind of scratching against his shirt.
Oh,
so
is it?
Just if you would just make your lavalier. Okay, good. Also,
Thank you.
Also, I love the idea. I never heard you say it before, Mr. Cleary, that people carrying heavy burdens are walking prayers, and I think that's really kind of inspired. But what I want to ask you is, what about people who are like fully alive, people who are turned on to life, people who are really, just enjoying themselves to the hilt? What do they have to say about prayer? Are they as much of a walking prayer as the person who's carrying that heavy burden?
Well, isn't that an interesting question? No, I don't think there is much of a walking prayer as the person with the heavy burden, but I think they are second rank, above about 8 other ranks.
Nietzsche's going to get after you.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I do think that the purpose of life is to come alive as much as possible. And the people with the heavy burdens have the same dream and the same ideal. So they come as alive as they can, and often outdistance us all. Helen Keller is such a marvelous example of that, isn't she?
Sure is. Sure is.
So, thank you very much, caller.
Okay, I'm going to get off because I know everybody's waiting in line. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a very important part of spirituality. Having fun, loving life, living life to the hilt.
I think it's true. It was like I was thinking that a young colt running and jumping in a pasture, it's praying. It's giving thanks to its creator for life, for its legs, for the green grass, for its ability to prance about. It's a song of praise.
It is, yes. Now that mystifies me, Lee. There are thousands of animals doing beautiful things that no one sees.
True.
Now, doesn't that create a problem for theology?
Why?
What is the meaning of all that underground life?
Oh.
Unless perhaps there are spirits we know not of who observe that wonderful stuff and who praise God for it. So, to me, it calls for the existence of lots more persons than we see on earth.
Perhaps, maybe. I don't know, obviously, but I think you don't have to have an audience to make your prayer real.
Well,
I mean, you can be the juggler in front of the altar without anyone watching you.
But God is watching.
That's right.
But you wouldn't have a juggler with no audience at all.
As long as God's watching.
Well,
I would hope God would watch.
This problem really intrigues me. For instance, for millions of years before we came on Earth, there were the drama of the dinosaurs. And why? What sense did it make? We missed most of the action. It's like putting a movie on with no one in the audience. There was no one watching the dinosaurs that we know of.
Right.
So I think we have to postulate an audience. And that would somehow be other spirits.
Well, I mean, Maybe, but I don't see where that it follows that you have to have an audience to justify it.
No, I'm trying to get at the meaning of something that's beautiful.
Okay. But God sees it.
But God doesn't need to see it. God presumably is infinite in joy, infinite in beauty, infinite in intelligence.
But I mean, I'm thinking of a dolphin now, leaping out of the water, and they're just enjoying life when they do that. I mean, there may be some practical things that they're doing. Maybe they're fishing when they come back in, but I think it's part of their makeup to glorify God that way. At least that's what I would say. Mm-hmm. But why would they have to have a boat of tourists watching them doing that to make it worthwhile? I mean, just to do it is all in itself. It's worthwhile. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I have just a metaphysical problem. Mm-hmm. They are doing something that, well, let's say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. So there isn't any beauty in a dolphin in itself. It's in the eye of the beholder of the dolphin. Now, that might be one approach to the question, but a great drama doesn't make sense to me unless there is an audience of some kind, like the dinosaurs. And why would one dinosaur chase another? And
they were hungry.
Maybe I'm trying to figure it out too much. But anyway,
interesting question.
It's a mysterious world.
Telephone call, and we have like 2 minutes left.
Okay, I hear there is a call for us. We have 2 minutes. Let's deal with it, please. Welcome.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed the program and how important I think it is when you've said that, you know, even if people are just asking for things, that's a prayer, because I think God likes to be spoken to, no matter how one tends to do it or finds in one's heart that one should do it. And the only thing was you spoke about Muslims and you said Sikhs. Sikhs aren't Muslims. They're either Sunnis or Shiites. So there was just that slight correction. But thank you.
Well, thank you for calling in and telling us how you feel about the program.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's wonderfully true. God likes to be spoken to. She said.
Yes. God is hungry for relationships with us.
Yeah.
And with dolphins.
Yes, well.
And dinosaurs. It's
so my little message is that we can pray in nonverbal ways.
Yes.
Verbal ways are good too.
Sure.
Everybody on earth, almost everybody on earth, prays in some way or other. Mm-hmm. And if you stand back and get a look at that, that's a wonderful symphony of praise and worship, acceptance and surrender. Those are important parts of life.
Well, in my work at the hospital, I would say to persons as I would get to know them, I would say, you know, I think you are a spiritual person. They would say, oh, no, I'm not religious at all. I don't go to church. And I said, I didn't say you were institutionally religious. You were personally, spiritually religious. They never thought about that. Thank you, Bill, for coming. Our music is playing, and we're about to be off the air. I appreciate your words, your wisdom, and your delightful humor. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Lee.
It's been good to have you here.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad for the people that called in. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this, and look forward to other programs on the same subject.
Yes.
My favorite subject of all.
Prayer.
Yes.
Well, there are a lot of components to it, and as you know, and I'm planning an ambitious series.
Oh, you are. Does it have a number of programs, or is it?
It isn't that. Yeah, I thought we were off the air. Well,